Annyeonghaseyo. Hi everyone, this is K Online Television and I'm your host Lena and welcome to the Korean Film Podcast. Carrying on from K-pop and K-drama, we're going to be exploring the other end of Korean entertainment with the depths and extremities of Korean cinema, which encompasses the motion picture industries of South Korea in particular. And I'm going to be talking about Korean horror, which features many of the same themes and imagery as Japanese horror and has been around since the early years of Korean cinema, but not until the late 1990s that the genre began to experience renewal. Many of the Korean horror films tended to focus on the suffering and anguish of characters rather than focus on the explicit blood and guts aspects of horror. But I'm going to argue that the blood and guts is still plenty in there in the films that I'm going to discuss today. But first, I'm going to introduce myself and let you all know how I got into Korean film. And maybe some of you would have had a similar experience. Currently a 20-year-old film student living between Manchester and London, and I'm completely into Korean films. I only really started getting into Korean cinema, however, about 3 years ago. I was at a stage where I was trying to watch everything that people recommended me, and a friend recommended me this famous Korean film. Maybe you can guess it, the infamous Old Boy. The way he presented it, though, made it seem more of a dare to watch it, as if it was so controversial and so difficult to watch that it was like a trial watching it. And so that's exactly why I wanted to watch it. The controversial nature just made it all the more interesting for me. And so when I set up to watch it, my imagination was going completely wild, preparing absolutely to be shocked. So when I finally did get around to seeing it, I don't think I was prepared for the actual emotional impact and the depth and raw intensity that was coupled with the violence and brutality of the film. It wasn't superfluous gore or violence at all. It worked within the plot and made you feel for the characters. And from then on, I became completely obsessed with the director, Chan-wook Park, and the actors, and from there it expanded to a general love of South Korea's brilliant and unflinching cinematic output. The song that was just played was The Old Boy by the amazing composer Young-wook-jo. And let me tell you, it was so difficult trying to narrow down what tracks to play during this podcast because they are all stunning and gorgeous. But this one with its kind of Western vibe, I thought really reflects Choi Min-sing's character and his anti-hero persona. But just a little bit of information about the film before I continue, for those who are unfamiliar with it. Old Boy was released in 2003, directed by Chan-wook Park and starring Min-sik Choi, Ji Tae-yoo and Hae Jung Kang. Described as a neo-noir thriller which tells the story of a man, Oh Dae-soo, who is kidnapped and imprisoned in a room for 15 years, only to be released unexpectedly one day in order to try and find the one who captured him and seek his revenge. It is based on the Japanese manga of the same name, written by Nobuaki Minagishi and Garen Tsuchiya. Old Boy is the second installment of the Vengeance trilogy, preceded by Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance and followed by Sympathy for Lady Vengeance. So you can tell that Park really likes this revenge theme in his movies. And in 2008, voters on CNN named it one of the 10 best Asian films ever made. So it's definitely one to watch. And now I'm going to play a song that reflects the antagonist of the film called Cries and Whispers. Those with great memories will remember that this emotional music, Cries and Whispers, is played when Woo-jin Lee remembers his lost love, I stress, love. And despite their disturbing nature of their relationship, we can't help but feel for their tragic doomed romance. And it is precisely moments like this that demonstrate the director's expertise and the appeal of Korean film as a whole. The audience is forced to empathize with the despicable, to humanize the monstrous, and in this way it transcends most other genres of film currently invading the box office. Chan-wook Park went on to break into the American film industry after Old Boy with his first English-language film, Stoker, in 2013, starring Mia Wasikowska, Matthew Good, and Nicole Kidman, which tells the story of a stranger entering the lives of a grieving family and irrevocably changing them. I have to say that by far this film was my favourite movie of 2013, maintaining the similar disturbing dimension that is habitual in Park's films, but relying more on the allegorical and symbolic visual expression rather than explicit portrayal of societal taboos. It is precisely the innuendo in this film, which gives it its power and allows it to resonate throughout time and with every viewing, inciting a different emotion, a different reaction in me than the previous one. That piece by the great Clint Mansell was the perfect example to demonstrate the suggestive eroticism of the film, which I talked about earlier. Never have I seen such an erotic scene with such little physical touching than in this one. And just how the story is told through the piece of music as well. The invasion of Charlie Stoker into India's life, and then India's defiant retaliation, and then gradually succumbing to him and becoming his pawn as they match tones and fall under his seductive power. And that was Becomes the Colour by Emily Wells. And now, not to go too on to Chan-wook Park, we're going to move on to Joon-ho Bong, one of the other famous Korean directors. And I'm going to talk about The Host. This movie concerns a monster kidnapping a man's daughter and his attempts to rescue her, made in 2006. Usually I try to stay away from monster films because I feel like once you've seen one, you've seen them all. Big monster kills people, everyone goes mental screaming, landmark buildings get destroyed, then a vigilante group of misfits eventually takes him down in the end. So it took me a while to get around to seeing The Host, but as it is one of the most famous Korean movies, I had to give it a go. And I have to say, it completely exceeded my expectations. That was When Present It Stands by Lee Byung-woo. And this piece perfectly reflects the disturbing yet emotional nature of the film. Actually, it is not a monster film. It's a film about a family being torn apart, and it's this that persuaded me to carry on watching Joon-ho Bong's movies, which is the reason why I particularly love the song I just played, When Present It Stands. Also, that it sounds a little bit like Pirates of the Caribbean. And now we're going to play two more songs from Lee Byung-woo's amazing soundtrack, Running Lowly and then In Praise of the Han River. Two very different songs reflecting on the duality of disturbing yet beautiful themes throughout the movie, which I feel encompasses the entirety of Korean cinema as a whole, you could argue. But another film that definitely does have the duality between disturbing and beautiful is the 2010 Ji-woon Kim film, I Saw the Devil. This film introduces the character of NIS agent Kim Soo-yeon, played by Lee Byung-hun, who embarks on a quest of revenge, when his fiancée is brutally murdered by a psychopathic murderer, Yang Kyung-chil, played by Choi Min-sik. The line between good and evil begins to blur when the two play a dangerous game of cat and mouse. And that was Soo-yeon's theme by Maug, and is played in a moment of devastating reflection from the title character, where he sees the monster he has become and realises that his quest of revenge has proved fruitless and not quenched by his grieving. Proving that revenge perhaps isn't always the correct answer, I would say, is the moral of the film. And if you're interested in Korean film, I would not be put off by the controversy and definitely give this one a watch, even if it is a little bit sad. That was The Devil's Bossa, which I can tell you're all thinking doesn't sound like a horror movie song at all. And I actually laughed out loud when Googling this on YouTube, and I found somebody commented, this song makes me forget that this is a serial killer film, with its kind of Hispanic vibe and the soft use of classical guitar, which is an attribute to Maug, the composer of the film itself. But like I said, it contributes to the whole beautiful and destructive dynamic of the film. I first watched this film with my flatmates, and I would say be careful who you watch this with, because halfway into the movie, both of them turned to me and said, Lena, we're never letting you choose the movie again. Which is fair enough. The film is definitely not for everyone and has drawn its fair share of controversial press, actually, with many claiming it's misogynistic in its portrayal of violence against women. However, I'd argue that it is Kyung-chul's character which is the misogynist, and Kim Soo-yeon who acts as the counterpoint against him, attempting to rid the world of his destructive presence, but instead gets warped into the destruction himself. I'd say that the press surrounding it is just a testament to Choi Min-sik's brilliant acting. Yes, he does constantly tend to do these disturbing characters, but only because he's amazing at it. And you can't help but flinch away from his disturbing intensity as he stares down the camera. Moving on, I'm going to talk about films that are coming out soon, and I'm extremely very excited to watch The Handmaiden by, Chan-wook Park. It is adapted from the 2002 novel Fingersmith by Welsh writer Sarah Waters, with a setting changing from the Victorian era to Korea under Japanese colonial rule in the 1930s, a period where Western culture came through Japan. The film was selected to compete for the Palme d'Or at the 2016 Film Festival and tells the story of a pickpocket, Suki, who is hired to be a handmaiden to a Japanese heiress who lives a secluded life on a large countryside estate with her domineering uncle, Kuzuki. It explores themes of gender, homosexuality, and Korean national identity. That was The Sound of You Coming by Gain from, you may know her from girl group Brown Eyed Girls, Feet Min Seo. And I absolutely love the 30s vintage style of the film, and the aesthetic as a whole seems to match that of Stoker, which is another reason why I'm so excited for it to come out. But don't just take my word for it. It received rave reviews across the board, but with some claiming apparently it overdoes the eroticism and is gratuitous, which would reflect more the old boy style, I think. But that hasn't stopped the film from being sold to 116 countries, including to Amazon Studios in the US, as announced by South Korea's CJ Entertainment. Kinney S. Kim, head of CJ Entertainment's international department, said there was fierce competition among the distributors for rights. As to when it will be released in the UK, the film currently in post-production, CJ Entertainment did not go further than to specify the film aims for release this year. So I'm sorry to say I don't have anything more specific for that, but I'll keep you up to date until I have a more definite date. And until then, I'm going to end it with another song from Old Boy. And that's all from me today. I hope you enjoyed the podcast and are inspired to watch a few more Korean films. And catch up with us on social media. We are on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram at K-Online Television. And please let me know what you thought about these films. If you agreed with me, you disagreed with me, and even if you have any film requests you want me to talk about in the future. But that's all for me. Goodbye and Annyeong Chingu!